On tonight, I want to invite you to the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 40. And if you'll meet me at verse number 9 in just a moment. Genesis chapter 40, I'm going to read starting with verse number 9. While you're turning to Genesis, finding chapter 40 and verse number 9, I want you to think about something that happens to us each and every night. And that is, we go to sleep and we have dreams. Now, many people wake up and don't even remember their dreams. Other people, like myself, can dream and have some vivid dreams. Sometimes you can remember a dream you had 10 years ago, 20 years ago. When we think about dreams, there are some that are so vivid they might wake us up in the middle of the night. Your heart might race. You might find yourself sweating. When we have those types of dreams, we wonder, what is it all about? Is something good going to happen? Is something bad going to happen? Well, most of the time when we have dreams, they're just usually a bunch of thoughts and images and happenings in our mind from clues throughout the day and experiences and just a lot of stuff that as our mind is resting and trying to process, we just have a lot of things that formulate into a dream, and most really amount to about nothing. But what happens when you have a dream and you can't interpret the dream? At least in the context of this narrative tonight in Genesis chapter 40, we're going to see an interesting thing here, because I want us to keep in mind that one of the things that will steal our joy is not being grateful, ingratitude. And you're going to see that as we talk about dreams tonight. In Genesis chapter 40, starting at verse number 9, and the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me. And in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee into thy place, and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. Again, that's Genesis chapter 40, and we just read verses 9 through 14. We have to be grateful, appreciative, thankful if we're going to have joy. Whensoever we've been blessed, whensoever we recognize people have been good to us, and certainly God has been good to us, we always need a heart of gratitude. We are so oriented to thinking about what we don't have, what we don't like, what's wrong, who's wrong, that we might miss how many things are right in our lives, how many people are good for us, how many blessings we enjoy. Let's understand this narrative in Genesis chapter 40 so that we can extract some principles that will be relevant to us. In Genesis chapter 40, we see here that Joseph is in prison. And while he is in prison, there are 2 cellmates that come in. They were servants or workers for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And this Pharaoh had put his butler and baker in jail. Joseph is looking after them, and Joseph comes in one morning and determines that something's not right with these guys. He checks on them and asks each of them, what's going on? Both guys said, we've had dreams and we don't know how to interpret these dreams. So Pharaoh lets them tell him the dream, and he interprets the dreams for them. The baker, the interpretation was unfavorable, and the baker would not live. He would be subjected to Pharaoh's punishment. But the butler, he gets a good interpretation. As Joseph breaks down the dream for the butler in Genesis chapter 40, he tells the butler, listen, in 3 days, things are going to get better for you. You are going to be restored. Everything is going to be all right. You're not going to stay in jail. Everything is going to be favorable. Joseph shares this with him, and in verse 14, Joseph says, I have but one request, and that is when you get out of your cell, so to speak, when you get out of your storm, when you get out of your predicament, because I have spoken favorably to you, I just want you to do me one thing. And that is, I want you to help me to get out of this. Because remember, they're all in jail together, Joseph, the baker, and the butler. Verse 14, he says to the butler, I want you to remember me when things go well with you. What do you think happened? Well, when you get to reading the last part of Genesis chapter 40, in verse number 21, the Bible says, and he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, just as Joseph said in his interpretation of the dream, he was going to be restored as the butler. Unfortunately, verse 23 says, yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. How often is that true of people, that as soon as they get their blessing, they forget where they come from, or they forget how they got the blessing? How true is that for people who get a blessing and act as if they did it for themselves and don't remember that somebody helped them, somebody encouraged them, somebody blessed them, somebody gave them a chance, somebody opened the door for them. But no, there's a heart of ingratitude. The butler gets his restoration and goes about his business. Here are some things we can glean from this lesson in Genesis chapter 40. Number one, remember the people who helped you. No matter how high you get, no matter what you achieve, acquire, or accomplish, always remember you did not get there by yourself. In fact, here's a way to help you to remember. Here's an assignment for you. Look up that old teacher that encouraged you. Maybe it was a next door neighbor. Maybe it was another Christian who took time with you. Maybe it's someone who prayed for you. Maybe it's somebody who shared a kind word with you at a harsh time in your life. Why don't you send them a card and thank them, even if it was something they did 30, 40, 50 years ago. If you can find them, you never know how it might bless them to know that they made a difference in your life. If nothing else, say a special prayer for them and ask God to bless them for being a blessing to you. Remember the people who have helped you. That's what the butler did not do. Number two, respond in kind to other people. So you can't forget where you've come from. And just as someone has helped you with something, return the kindness and bless someone else. If you've been encouraged, encourage someone. If you've been helped, help someone. If someone prayed for you, pray for someone else. If we just learn how to respond in kind to people, especially in these days in which everyone, especially in the public sector, seems to think that being nasty and mudslinging and all of that is the way to be, we need a little bit more kindness and consideration. Number 3, recall your blessings when you are down. You see, when you get blessed and you're up and you're on top of the mountain, you're high on life and things are going well, don't think there may not come a time where you're going to be down again. See, don't get so far-fetched with how good things are going that you don't realize that mountains exist in the midst of valleys. And you may be on top of the mountain today, but be careful how you treat people. Be careful about your attitude. Be careful about your spirit when things are well, because you may have another valley coming before you get to the next mountain. So recall your blessings when you're down. Recall them, and it'll help encourage you to get to your next mountain. And last, realize that the Lord is watching. Why do you think Genesis 40, verse 23 mentions that the butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him? Because the Lord took note of that. And it is a lesson to us thousands of years later. If you want to have some joy, you better remember you didn't get to be who you are and where you are all by yourself. A little gratitude goes a long way. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.